Hi, I'm Kai Gilb, and on this little drive, I like to talk about three aspects critical to describe a system that is again critical for you to succeed in product development. If you want to learn how to succeed in product development, you have to have a firm grip of these three different ways to describe any system. So the three different ways, they are the technical solutions, the functions, and the values. Okay, now let's talk about the functions first. It's maybe the easiest. The functions are what the system does. Now, a lot of software people, and most of my clients, but not all, are software, so they talk about functionality very, I don't know, they just spit out this word all the time, functionality. Now, they might not have defined it very sharply, but if you look at the word, it's not really functionality that they're looking for, it's really function. And function is what the system does. Okay, so I'm driving in this Tesla right now, and one of the kind of unique functions is this thing called Autopilot. So that's a function. Now, the Autopilot, what does it do? It drives the car. So the function isn't Autopilot. That's a technical solution. The function is to drive a car. So this system has an autopilot, auto drive the car. Auto is really the technical solution part. All right, so I'm just doing this to indicate that this car is sort of driving itself. It has that function. Okay, it doesn't really do the lights and everything yet, but it drives. Okay, then that's the next, that comes over to the next category. How well, I call them values, but you might have different names for these. These are performance attributes, quality attributes. I call them value attributes, but it's how well the system does what it does, right? Or how well the system does its function. So if the function is autopilot, or really pilot, right? The function is really pilot, to drive, and pilot in the sense to drive the car. So the value is how well does it do that? How well does it drive the car? That's the question. Okay, now then the third category is that how. The how is the technical solutions to drive the car so well, right? The technical solutions to drive the car function so well, how well it drives it, the value. Okay, now my argument, which is kind of extreme, and you know, it really shakes up your thought pattern of do you understand what I'm talking about here? So my argument that I like to put forward is that functions are free. They're free to make, and they're free. You don't get any money for it. You can't sell functions. Let me get into why. So let's, for instance, take autopilot. Now there's an auto part there, which is technical solution. But the pilot to drive the car, that's free because the customers already have it, right? Then with that I mean, there are already ways to drive the car that the customers possess. And mainly it consists of a person driving. So a person driving is the function of driving a car. It doesn't matter. So the person part is the technical solution. The autopilot is the technical solution, right? So it's like human pilot or autopilot. The human or auto is the technical solution part. The pilot part is driving the car. Now, the interesting thing is how well does it do it, and what other value attributes or quality attributes does the system have? So if I drive the car, or you drive the car, it has a certain level of smoothness and safety and cost, right? Maybe you have a taxi driver as an autopilot, right? So it has a set of values that are critical for the system. That's why we don't allow 11-year-olds to drive around on public roads, because they don't possess the capability in general, I'm sure some do, but to drive the car safely. Maybe not the maturity to drive it safely, even though they technically probably could learn how to drive a car, right? They don't have the maturity to not toy around with it and suddenly cause an accident. So the quality attributes. Now, when we're talking about, the rapid development of autopilot and how it's going to take over all the jobs, which it will, the question isn't, do we have autopilot, or does Uber have autopilot cars? What about Apple? Obviously Tesla is working on it. That's not really the interesting question. The interesting question is, how well does it do it? So in this Tesla, it does it quite well on the freeway, on the motorway. It doesn't do it. They're not really claiming it does it in small roads. Like right now, I'm in a roundabout. You don't use the autopilot. It doesn't work very well, to say the least. So, how well does it do it is an interesting part of this. This applies for any system, right? I'm using autopilot for fun because it's a function of this car, and it's just but whatever your system is doing for the customer or for the user more, let's see, where do I need to go? I need to go here. Okay, so navigating is another. So I had to navigate now in my head. The car navigates, I can navigate, right? Who does it better? What's easier for the user? I use this, of course, the car navigation all the time, especially when I go to new places. But now I'm going to a place, in my town, which I go quite often. So I don't really need that computer navigation system. It's just noisy. I can turn it off, but it keeps saying turn right, turn left. Okay. So yeah, so what more about that? Yeah, the values, how well those values are the critical part. It's like the number one thing that you have to get right. So, but if you can mix these two, if you start mixing the functions with the values, with the technical solutions, and when you describe the system, when you're creating the system, it gets all messed up, because you have to work them completely differently, and there are many relationships. So you have one function with lots of values attached to it, and one value that is attached to many functions. So you can't really mix them, as like in a user story, for instance, where you say, as a stakeholder, I want to do a certain function. I want to do a function so that I create a value. So it has the function and value part in there. And sometimes that I want to do is mixed up function and technical solutions. Already bad there. But that's a one-to-one relationship, and that's not real. That's not how reality works. So you need to split them up. And then the functions, you need to learn how to write without technical solutions. That will liberate you in the choices you have, because then the technical solutions you don't call requirements. You don't require a technical solution. That doesn't make sense. The technical solutions are there to create the functions and the values that are the interesting part. So you make them, you specify them separately. The function, it's binary. Either the system will do that function or it will not do that function. The values are variables. They're always variables. They're always more or less, right? It's not like it drives the car safely or not. It's, even humans like myself, I'm hoping to be very safe, but I'm not 100% safe, right? I run the risk of causing an accident. So, and I'm not 100% smooth, and I don't always choose optimal route. That's another function, right? The navigation part. So how well do I do it? It's always a variable. So you must learn how to quantify. You must learn how to quantify the values. If you don't quantify if you don't have in your project, if you don't have a set of function that the system must do, then you don't know what you're going to do. But on top of that, if you don't have the values, how well the system has to do those functions, and you haven't quantified all those values, you're lost. Okay, I don't care what you say. You're suboptimal in your product development. So, okay, and the values are what cost. It's what's challenging to make, right? It's not difficult to make an autopilot. Actually, if you go to YouTube, you find, some Joe Smith kind of guy has created an autopilot, and it works quite well, right? He's, you can find them driving around, demoing, the car is driving itself around. So, creating an autopilot, I'm sure, I take my hat off to these dudes that created it themselves. I'm not saying it was easy what they did, but it's within the grasp of almost anyone to create an autopilot. But to create one that works well, that has values of safety and comfort and reliability, that's the difficult part, right? That's costly. It's enormously costly and valuable, right? So that's why I call them values. These are the things that your customers, the users, the stakeholders really care about, these values. So that's what you really got to get a good grasp on. The values of your system. Number one, everything else is secondary. The value, and you need to learn how to quantify that. So that's the three different elements. And depending on when you see this video, so that's it, I'm done. Now a little pitch. I usually hold webinars where I go way in depth on this on Thursdays. So, today is Friday, so next Thursday, I'm going to hold another webinar. But if you go to guild.com and you'll see the link there for the webinar, you can see exactly when the next webinar is. It's free, just like this video. So come and join in, and I'm going to tell you, a lot of cases where people are using this kind of thinking and succeeding in their projects beyond their wildest dreams, where others are failing, right? People standing sort of next to them, not figuring out how to succeed in this type of projects. And then these guys come in and wildly succeed because they have their head straight on. They have separated out the technical solutions from the functions, from the values. Take care.